With so much climate change and ecological unrest happening in the world, it's curious to see if there's really going to be a story that's able to tap into those elements in a sufficient manner. However, DC has a character known as the Swamp Thing who is essentially the ecological answer to some of those inquiries. The Swamp Thing is chosen by the Green, and the Green is one of the elemental forces in the universe, inert and connected to all forms of plant life. And DC has just chosen a new identity for their Swamp Thing, who recently went under the name of Alec Holland, but now goes as Levi Kamei. My name is Arakko Braddock, and today we're going to go ahead and celebrate the excellent conclusion of the Swamp Thing Season 2 with issue number 16 that just went ahead and came out today. And I want to go ahead and start by showing off the cover of the issue. Take a look at this cover right here, and big thanks to our friends over at Adventures in Poor Taste for providing this preview of the Swamp Thing, issue number 16. And this issue is written by Ram V with art from Mike Perkins, colors from Mike Spicer, and letters from Aditya Bidikar. Let's go ahead and read off the solicitation text DC provided for the issue. Now restored to full power, the Swamp Thing must face the Parliament of Gears if he has any hope of saving the Earth. But the corruptive, cancerous force of industry has already destroyed so much. Will the Swamp Thing be able to turn the destructive tide before it's too late? Find out in the earth-shaking finale of The Swamp Thing. So let's go ahead and discuss who Levi Kamei is and talk a little bit about this new Swamp Thing series that just went ahead and wrapped up. Levi is a kind of a working man and a really sort of modern character. What this series does is really kind of give the origins of how Levi first became the Swamp Thing, and also plays with some of those ecological elements I mentioned earlier to great kind of display and great effort. Over the past few issues, the series has directly been commenting on the ecological issues by creating a sort of Parliament of Gears. The Parliament of Gears represents industry kind of tearing the earth in half and really just kind of bleeding the natural resources dry. So Levi also has an origin story that kind of ties into some of these ecological elements that makes him a tragic figure who kind of took a while to figure out some of his priorities and principles. But the idea that the writer Ram V decided to give Levi so much inner turmoil and also kind of flaws that are directly hinted on with this series is really why I love this issue in the first place. I think the kind of the first part of the Swamp Thing, season 1 of the Swamp Thing, if you will, was mostly focused on slowly expanding on Levi's origin. Whereas season 2 of the Swamp Thing, which kind of takes place in the back couple issues of the run, is really focused on having Levi come full circle and really take charge of these logical issues that he turned a blind eye towards for so long. Now, this series does not exist in a vacuum. Ram V is, drawing on inspiration directly from creators like Brian K. Vaughan and the legendary Alan Moore. Ram V masterfully uses so many of those elements in this new series to a really great effect. He really kind of takes such unconventional cast members and even has somebody from the Wildstorm universe that used to be a part of Image show up in this series. And I want to go ahead and expand on the art from Mike Perkins in a big way here. Just go ahead and take a look at this gorgeous, gorgeous page in the issue. Perkins is drawing so many figures in this last kind of panel framing the entire page. I really feel like Perkins has sort of come into his own with this Swamp Thing series. It just took a little bit of time, but the way that kind of each character is like glistening and has an interesting expression is just gorgeous. I know I have the same sort of problems with so many kind of artists, but some of the problems that I have with Perkins is that the faces can look too similar, or parts of the face can be emphasized too much. Like in even though this panel is really beautiful, Levi's face in particular does not have the sense of consistency from panel to panel. However, I still love this artwork. I think Perkins has improved quite a lot over the span of this series. I love the noir elements, and it'd be really difficult for me to imagine any other artist drawing this series. I just love how dark and kind of how seedy these page layouts are and these page designs are in general. And also, I want to go ahead and just commend this creative team here, because this is the run that really introduced Levi and fleshed out his character. Lots of times it can be difficult to kind of latch onto or grasp these like second or third generation DC characters, but Levi is so likable and really kind of comes into his own here. I would have a hard time seeing, somebody read through this entire series and not have somewhat of a connection to Levi, especially because he's so flawed earlier in the run. Now, I don't quite think maybe season 2 of the Swamp Thing is quite as good as season 1, but this issue and the previous issue really did a good job kind of showing how industry is battling nature in a really kind of specific way. And even though this is the work of fiction, Ram V is really carefully throwing ecological messages into the series. But there's a really careful balancing act, because you don't want a Swamp Thing run to be incredibly preachy. And that's where I think we do a great job. We bring in so many different comic book characters to make sure that readers know this is a comic book after all. We bring in, so many previous Swamp Thing supporting characters and even other characters across the DC universe with such kind of tight plotting that I really love this series from beginning to end. I want to see where DC takes Levi and the Swamp Thing next. I hope that Ram V and Mike Perkins are still going to be working on the series, but this entire Swamp Thing run is just absolutely mesmerizing. The way that the kind of messages don't interrupt the flow of the story is really, I think, the most important part in what sells this Swamp Thing run the most. If you're a huge fan of deep comics, if you saw the Swamp Thing television show, if you're interested and want to know more about these characters and just like DC Comics in general, this is one of the absolute best comics to pick up. When all is said and done, this is probably going to be one of the best comic books in the year for telling an interesting story and tackling such a heavy, heavy script and message. So I love this series. I love this creative team and all the commentary they have on kind of like the direction of the world and where kind of DC and comic book superheroes place in this is. Did you like the issue as much as I did? Let me know down in the comments below. Let me know what you want me to cover next, and be sure to hit that like button as well. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.